For a long time, I thought that leveling up meant doing more discipline, more productivity, more routines. And if I'm honest, that mindset kept me stuck for a really long time because every time I wanted to make a life change, I would make these big promises to myself. I'm gonna get consistent. I'm finally gonna get my life together. I'm gonna stop doing this, start doing that. And then a few days or weeks later, I would start breaking those promises. And it took me a really long time to realize that all those small broken promises were completely messing up my level up because every time we break a promise to ourselves, we teach our brain and our whole selves that our word doesn't really mean anything. And change becomes nearly impossible. The moment my life actually started changing was when I started raising my standards. And one of those standards was personal integrity with myself. Most people have no clue how often they break promises to themselves. We do it so much that it's not something that we even really think about. You tell yourself, tomorrow I am going to wake up earlier. This week, I am going to get my house together. I am going to stop spending money on things I don't need. I am going to start taking better care of myself. I'm going to finish that project and I'm going to get more serious about my goals. And when we say those things, we usually do mean them. But then the next day comes and we hit snooze. We put the decluttering or the cleaning task off. We scroll for another hour. We buy the thing that we said we weren't going to buy, or we eat the thing that we said we weren't going to eat. We push the goal back another week, and none of it feels like a big deal in the moment. It just feels like life. But those small moments add up because every time we break a promise to ourselves, we start reinforcing a pattern that says that our words are flexible, that our intentions don't really have to turn into action. And over time, we stop trusting ourselves. You hesitate to set goals because part of you doesn't believe that you're actually going to follow through. You make plans, but you already expect that you might fall off. You start telling yourself things like, I just don't have discipline, or I'm bad at routines, or I can never stay consistent. This just doesn't work for me. I would venture to say it's the reason that people have mad issue with setting New Year's resolutions and say that they don't work, and they start blaming lack of discipline or focus or whatever. Now, I'm going to say something that is probably going to be a hot take. The issue isn't discipline. Discipline is actually pretty easy when you have the right supports in place. And this is where a privileged mindset really matters. A privileged mindset says, I'm not powerless in my life. It says I have the ability to choose my habits, my environment, my actions, even if those choices are small at first. The moment that you believe you have agency, your standard starts to rise. And so back to the issue. The issue isn't discipline or focus. The issue is that we have practiced the habit of breaking promises to ourselves for years. And when we say that we're going to do something, our brain is in the background like, girl, please, you know you lying. The identity that grows out of that habit is someone who doesn't quite trust her own word. So that brings us to personal integrity. Personal integrity just means that I follow through on the commitments that I make to myself. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And when I say that I'm not going to do something, I don't. That's it. It sounds really simple, but it's actually one of the most powerful standards that you can raise in your life. Now, will it always be perfect? No. Will you always get it right? Also, no. You're still human. There are going to be days when things don't go as planned. There are going to be moments where you fall off or you get distracted or life just happens. But the difference is that when you raise the standard, you start following through far more often than you don't. People who change their lives aren't necessarily more talented or more motivated or have better circumstances or anything that is better than you, but they do live by a different standard. Their word matters. If they say they're going to take a walk, they take a walk. If they say they are going to finish a task, they finish the task. If they say they're going to start something, they start it because they've decided that their word actually means something. And even if they've had years of struggle, now they are doing things that allow them to start trusting themselves again. When you trust yourself, you stop questioning everything that you say that you're going to do and second guessing your ability to follow through. You stop feeling like you are constantly starting over and you start seeing yourself as someone who actually does the things that she says she's going to do. And I'm going to be honest, this can be very, very hard to build. There have definitely been times in my life where I have made all kinds of promises to myself and then broke them. And yes, for myself, I have seen that outcome hold true, that whenever I keep the promises that I make to myself, you can't tell me nothing. And when I don't, it becomes much harder for me to believe that I can do the things that I say that I want to do, because every broken promise chips away a little bit of your confidence. Confidence is built on watching yourself grow and being able to trust yourself. When that trust starts to rebuild, you keep showing up because you start relying on your standard. When you raise the standard of integrity in your life, it doesn't just affect one area. It starts changing everything. The moment that your word starts meaning something to you, it begins shaping how you live your days. Say, for example, you make a promise to yourself that you're going to read for 15 minutes each evening, and you do it. Because you kept that promise, you start seeing how you show up and how you spend your time. Instead of saying that you are going to use the evening differently and then losing 3 hours scrolling or watching things that you didn't even plan to watch, you start catching yourself because you told yourself you were going to use that time differently. And then your time starts reflecting your intentions instead of your impulses. And then you see how that starts to show up in your environment. You follow through on the small things that you started. You finish organizing that drawer. You clear that counter because you said you were going to deal with it. You put things back where they belong. You didn't suddenly become a perfectly organized person, but you said that you were going to take care of it. Now your word means something, and so you do it. You then start seeing how it shows up in your health. You actually take the walk that you said that you were going to take. You drink the water. You move your body, not perfectly and maybe even not every day, but more often than before, because you are no longer casually breaking these promises to yourself. You then start seeing it show up in your money. You pause before spending. You think twice before buying something impulsively. Nobody told you, oh, you can't have that, but you told yourself that you wanted to be more intentional and more disciplined with your money. So you pause. And that pause starts creating a different relationship with your money. As you can probably see, none of these things felt like changes that were really anything to write home about in the moment. But one thing triggered an avalanche of other small decisions that happen on a regular basis. And you wake up one day realizing that you're a completely different person. You're living a completely different life. When your standard is integrity, the decision to show up for yourself has already been made. You said you were going to do it, so you do it. It is simple. For this to work, it requires us to start with simple standards that, when practiced consistently, completely change the direction of our lives. One mistake that people make when they try to change their lives is they try to start big. They decide that they are going to completely transform everything overnight. They are going to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day. They are going to work out 6 days a week. They are going to declutter the entire house in a whole weekend, start a new routine, eat perfectly, stay consistent, and never fall off again. And yes, I have done every last one of those things. When we make those big declarations, it can feel so exciting in the moment. It feels like, man, I am finally getting serious. But the problem is that most of the time, those promises are too big to sustain right away. So a few days later, something slips. We miss our workout, we skip the routine, we fall behind on the plan. And instead of adjusting and continuing forward, a lot of people feel like they've already failed. So they stop. That cycle is so incredibly common, and it's almost funny because we know that it is way too aggressive, but we still fall into that trap every single time. This is where small promises come in. The integrity standard isn't about making these big dramatic promises to ourselves that we have to keep, but it's about making a series of small promises that we actually keep, that are actually sustainable. Things like, I'm going to finish this task before I go to bed, or I'm going to take a walk today. I am going to spend 10 minutes working on this project. I am going to put the phone down after this video. I am going to clear this one surface. I'm going to follow through on this one thing. Every time you follow through, it is so much deeper than just a habit. You are reinforcing an identity. You're teaching yourself, I am someone who does what I say that I'm going to do. And once you start seeing yourself that way, your behavior starts aligning with that. You won't have to force yourself all the time, and you won't need to feel like doing it before you can show up. You simply start acting as someone whose word means something. And the truth is that life generally changes through hundreds of small promises kept over time, not one big intense thing that we've done. For me, my faith actually deepens this idea even more because integrity isn't just about making promises that I keep to myself. It is about being the kind of woman that I believe that God is shaping me to become, someone who follows through, someone who grows, someone who's not looking for shortcuts, but takes responsibility for the life that she's been given. So this week, we are raising the personal integrity standard by keeping one promise to ourselves every day, just one. Do not make it something big or impressive. Make it small enough that you can actually follow through on it. The goal is to start building back up that self-trust so that we have a foundation when we want to do the bigger things. Again, it could be something like finishing something that you started, clearing that one surface that you have been meaning to deal with, going through that stack of mail, doing the thing that you told yourself early in the day that you were going to do. The point isn't that the promise is a big thing. The point is that it happens. And even better, if it happens when you don't feel like it, that's top tier, because that is where you are really starting to change some of that brain structure of how you do things and how you show up for yourself. When you start practicing this standard, you start paying more attention to the commitments that you make to yourself. You stop casually saying that you're going to do things that you know you probably won't do. And you become a whole lot more intentional about your word. And then when you do say you're going to do something, you follow through, which builds that self-trust. I want you to watch what starts to shift when you begin living like someone who trusts herself. Because when you start trusting yourself, you start showing up very differently for the life God has given you. So share in the comments, what is one promise you are going to keep to yourself this week to raise your personal integrity standard? If you watched the last video, you know that we just started a Level Up by Summer series where we are spending these next 3 months raising our standards and changing the direction of our lives by summer. And if you're new here, don't worry, you can jump right in anywhere. Next week, we're going to raise another standard. But for now, keep your word to yourself this week and see what starts to change. All right, my friends, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a like and share it with someone else who needs it. Also, if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? I'm gonna need you to jump on that. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next. Mwah. Bye for now. Hey girl, I want to ask you something. Have you started over more times than you can count? Maybe with decluttering or being more healthy or getting into a routine, or maybe there are goals that you want to make happen, but you just can't seem to either be consistent or even quite know where to start. That used to be my story. And the only way that I finally got to a place of real change was when I started showing up for myself and had the accountability to help me follow through. Because at some point, it stops being about trying harder and thinking about it, and it starts being about making a decision and having something that actually helps you to stick with that decision. And after sharing my story, I realized that there are a lot of other women who are like me, which is why I've created the KDT Collective. It's not a course or something that's going to take up all of your time or require tons of motivation, but it's a space for women who are ready to follow through. You will, of course, have structure and accountability and support, and we will have fun things going on, but you'll also have a group of women who are on that same journey of leveling up, cheering you on. So if you are in a place where you are ready to stop talking about changing your life and actually start living the life that you have been dreaming about, but in a way that is sustainable and grounded and real, you don't have to keep doing that on your own. This is my invitation to you to take that next step on yourself and join the collective. I'll see you inside.